Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. Military families are not like your traditional family. They are strong, brave, resilient, and some of the most incredible people I know. My name is Gracie, a U.S. Army BRAT, and I am your host. I am honored to be able to give military family members like myself a place for them to share their stories and experiences in the military life. Stay tuned for this week's guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Grace of Military Child and Life. Today, I'm here with Jan, who is a military brat, a military spouse. Her son joined the military, so military all around. But Jan, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you.
Well,
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Got a little bit of we have a lot of cedar that's around here, and so the allergies are just horrible.
I can imagine that. Yes, but thank you for being here. Tell me what it was like growing up as a military child to start off.
Well, I loved my life. One of the downsides is that we moved every 2 years. So just about the time I got into the groove with friends and stuff in school, I had to move.
Yeah.
So from the time I was 6 months old, I started moving around the world. So it was kind of neat.
Yeah. What experiences did you have? What was it like moving and going to different places?
Well, it was always nervous going to first day of school.
Yeah.
In a new city.
Right.
Yeah, first day of school. But I didn't have too much of an issue. One of the things I don't have are childhood friends. There are many people that I know and went to school with that had childhood friends, and I didn't have that because we moved every 2 years.
Right. That's the unfortunate part, because I don't even have many myself. And, you think back and everyone's like, my friend from kindergarten. I'm like, I don't talk to friends from kindergarten, really.
No, I don't remember anyone until high school.
Yeah. And those are the formative years.
Right. I was in the same city for 4 years, so that was nice.
Yeah. Especially during high school. It's good to have those 4 years of consistency.
Absolutely. I think some of the things I remember are when we came back from Hawaii, we came back on a ship. And both my sister was just a toddler, and she fell and had a cut under her chin. So she was kept in the cabin. My brother, who was older than me, he got so seasick. And so it was my dad and myself that we did all kinds of stuff on the ship. They had little games that you played. And one of them was to make a hat. And so my dad got a ice bucket, the old paper ice buckets. I don't know if you remember those or not. And I had a Barbie doll. He stuck the Barbie doll on top of the bucket, put the bucket on my head, and we went to the hat contest. I don't know if I won or not, probably didn't, but it doesn't matter. It was just the fact of being with my dad all that time because my mom had to stay in the cabin with my sister and brother. So it was real nice get together time with my dad. It was real close. It was very nice.
Yeah, and that's super cool that that there were games and stuff to keep the kids occupied and families occupied.
Because it was all military.
Yeah.
It was all military families. Yeah. That's
so incredible. And, what amazing memories, because you don't necessarily always get those times to spend with your service member because they're, they could be going on deployments or trainings or TDYs or numerous different things where they're not in the household. And so even couple hours make a difference.
Every 2 years we would move. And so let's say we moved and my dad had shore duty. So that meant that for those 2 years, he didn't go anywhere. And then the next 2 years he would get sea duty. And so he would be on the ship that would go out and do, they'd go to Japan and all that kind of stuff, but he was still at home.
Yeah.
He would just go out on these little trips, so it wasn't like he was like the Army or Marines that would have to go over and fight wars.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's still like, it's still hard. And going through those things and back and forth and parent in and out. And I think that's sometimes almost harder on kids and on families when you
Yeah.
never know when your parent is going to be there or is going to be gone. And you're like, where's my dad? Where's my dad?
Right. Right.
For me, my dad was Army. So we knew
Yep.
like he was going on a deployment. He unfortunately got injured on that deployment, but we knew it was going to be 400 days and we knew it was gonna, we knew that. And of course, it's never certain until it happens,
Right.
But, we know these sorts of things. And, he was thankfully, gone for, a period of time. And it wasn't, that back and forth of here and gone and here and
Right.
gone and here and gone. And so I think, in a sense, having that here and gone is almost more challenging.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. You never know. And you're constantly all over the place and constantly, wondering. And in that state of, okay, well, what's going to happen now? But that's what we're trained for as military kids, in a sense, to learn and adapt and overcome.
What's amazing is how much the military forces today really encompass the families.
Yeah.
When I was a military brat, there weren't connections to other moms or other kids like there are today. I understand that there's so much support for the family back home while the service person is in some country. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how much they do today that they didn't do when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I find it so unfortunate that when you were growing up that there wasn't that support because, when I was growing up and especially living in a community where we were just surrounded by wounded service members and being a daughter of a wounded service member, that support was so, so needed to get through. And even the support groups that were in my schools for, of course, kids of wounded, but then also kids whose parents were deployed or the programs to help welcome, the kids who were moving in the middle of the school year. And so I really think that those sorts of things are so impactful to military kids and military brats when they're trying to navigate this lifestyle. And
exactly.
It's hearing that it wasn't available, years and years ago. It's so heartbreaking to hear because I know that I would not have felt the support that I had without what I did have.
Well, my mother was very resourceful. Mm-hmm. So we had many military families around us. Right. And so that was our support.
Yeah.
Were other families.
And I think that's the best support.
Yeah. If someone was going to the commissary, they'd ask their neighbor, hey, you need anything at the commissary? It was just this big family that you could draw from.
Yeah. And I think, even for me growing up, we weren't necessarily surrounded by extended family like my parents, my grandparents.
Oh, no.
It was literally just the four of us, my mom, my dad, and my sister, and I. And the military family is who I really call my family. I have so many adopted grandparents and aunts and uncles, and those are the people who I turn to first. I pick up the phone and I know that they are going to be on the other end. Brothers, sisters, cousins, everything. Like they just become such an integral part of your life that military friends become military family. And you have to live it to know it, because I can say like, hey, this is my brother. Like, and people are like, no. And I'm like, no, seriously. Like, we grew up together. We experienced so much together. And
unfortunately, my sister was 6 years younger than me, and my brother was 6 years older than I am.
Oh my goodness.
So we were really separate generations. Mm-hmm. By the time I was 6, my brother was 12. Right. Well, I didn't fit in with any of his friends. And by the time I was 12, I had to take care of my six-year-old sister,
Yeah, babysitting.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care of your sister.
Yeah. And so those military friends and military families and brothers and sisters that you make along the way are so impactful. And, even that, you look back and you're like, oh, I forgot that person existed. Like, I don't talk to that person, to this day, but the impact they had on your life for maybe 2 years is more than words can speak.
I remember people, but I don't remember their names.
Yeah.
I remember there were like 4 of us kids that used to play together. I can picture them, but I can't remember their names.
Yeah.
And, but we had so much other things going on that, by the time I had moved a couple of times, it just became natural. Mm-hmm. We knew that in 2 years we'd be moving someplace else.
Yeah. And it's so, in a sense, when I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I wish I could just talk to this person again. And yes, we have technology. And if I could remember, names, it's so easy to just find someone.
If I could remember their names, I would certainly try and look them up. But
right. But it's hard to, when you're constantly, it sounds bad, but like cycling through friends, and getting new friends and moving and meeting new people, it's hard to remember, hundreds of names, and, where you knew them and where you met them. And, it's so fun to meet new people, but it's hard when you have to leave them. And that was always my biggest struggle.
Do you have any favorite places you lived?
Oh, so we were a reserve family, so we didn't move very frequently.
Oh, okay.
But I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and I call that home. That is, I love Cleveland. Not many people say that. But I love Cleveland. And then I spent a lot of from the age of 9 to 12 in San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
And at Fort Sam. And then my dad retired and we moved to Cape Coral, Florida. So I've been here ever since, and we've been here about a decade. And so I think each place is just so special. And it's the hardest thing to pick, one place. I couldn't imagine having more to choose.
Well, my favorite place was Astoria, Oregon.
Really?
Yeah, it's just a beautiful little city right on the tip of the Columbia River, emptying into the Pacific. So it was just a wonderful place. Yeah. Wonderful place. I went back once, but I'd love to go back again, spend a few days.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing is like if you are living the life of a civilian child, you don't get to explore these places and find just the little, cities, the little random places. We'd think of traveling and we're like, oh, we want to go to, Seattle or, Austin or, Nashville, these big cities where it's like very touristy. And we don't necessarily get the time to as a traveler, you don't necessarily get the time to pick out these little cities, but then as basically, a nomad or a gypsy, someone who doesn't have a home necessarily, military kid, you're going to all of these places and you're exploring and you have the time to go and plant roots for a little while, act like a local, experience what it is to be a local, and then move on. And I think that's so rewarding.
Well, I was born in Mississippi, and that's where all our relatives are still in Mississippi or Ohio. Okay. Well, Dad being in the Navy, all of our stations were around the coast. Mm-hmm. So Virginia, Texas, California, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, that kind of thing. So we saw them about every 2 years, depending on where we were headed. It was generally every 2 years we'd try to stop in Mississippi and visit with relatives. They never came to visit us, but
it's hard to get people to come visit you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's so fun though, getting experience like both the West Coast and the East Coast and Hawaii and Central, Texas, pretty central, Gulf Coast, everything.
Yep. Well, when I was a wife, um, we went to the Azores. We spent what 2 or 3 years in the Azores, which was absolutely phenomenal. The Portuguese people are so sweet.
Wow,
And
that's incredible.
Oh yeah, and then I got to spend time in Japan as well. So that was really cool. Yeah, my son was born there. So
oh wow, yeah, that's
yeah,
incredible. And just
yeah,
getting to experience a different country is so fun.
exactly. Yeah,
And no matter where you go, like Japan is a popular one, or Germany or Italy, it's so fun to I've only been to Scotland as a tourist.
oh, I'd love to go there.
It's gorgeous. You should.
I bet.
But it is really fun to, we knew the locals. We had friends who lived there. And so being able to explore somewhere where, like I said earlier, you're not necessarily just going to those landmarks and those touristy places. You're going to the places where it's like, oh, this is a little hidden gem. And experiencing a different culture is incredible. And I'm sure you even realized within the United States, like we have so many different cultures, East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast, Hawaii, and so many different experiences just within one country.
Yep. Yep. And, each place I've been, there's always something special about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember as a wife, we were in Wichita, Kansas. He was in the Air Force. And we found this restaurant that had the best Mexican food I've ever eaten. Even to today, even being here in San Antonio.
Yes. And San Antonio, being there, we got some really good Mexican food.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's more really Tex-Mex here than actual Mexican. It's Tex-Mex.
I could go for some Taco Cabana or any day.
Absolutely.
Yes. No, that's so fun though. And, going all of these places, I am such a food person. Like I could get food everywhere I go. And that's one of my favorite parts of traveling is going and trying the different cuisine of a city or a country. And, Texas was fun because we got the Mexican food and Tex-Mex. Right. In Ohio, there's so many different cultures in Cleveland. So we could get anything we wanted. The best Italian food. We got so many different things there. And then here, in Florida, we get seafood. And
I bet.
So much good food here too. And so that's really one of the fun parts is just traveling around and eating different foods.
True. I guess Oregon was really a nice place to live. Out where we lived out the back door, you go into the forest, and we would go. There were trails, and we would go down to the follow the trails down to the old what do you call them? Where the lumber trucks would go through. I can't think of the name. There's a proper name for it. But we go down there and play. And in fact, in Astoria is where I had my first spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of special.
Yeah. And it's so fun, because, for me, it's hard to pick a favorite spot because so many monumental things happened, in my life in each place. But it's so fun when you're able to connect, a certain experience or a certain memory to a place. Yep. And it's like, okay, this makes it feel like home, or this made it feel like home. And, because you have to make every place feel like home.
Oh, you do.
You're going to be miserable.
Where home is.
Yeah.
When my parents were still alive, home was in Southern California. Mm-hmm. Now that they're gone and my brother's gone, basically it's my sister. She's become the home spot in San Francisco. And my grandkids, I've got one in San Diego and one in Chicago, and they come home for Christmas to San Francisco. So that's where I'm headed in another week or so.
Yeah. And you have to make the most of what you can. Because
Sure.
if you just live, a life of a military child, a military spouse, and you're like, oh, I hate it here. I hate it here. I don't want to be here.
There are a lot of spouses like that.
Yes.
I ran into many. I hate it here. I just want to go home. And I'm thinking, gee, didn't you know you were marrying a military person? Didn't you know you were going to be traveling?
Yeah. And I think that is it's so hard to, think of that. And, you're traveling to so many different places and there's so many opportunities, with doing that. And sure, I was the same way. I hated when we moved to Texas because I grew up in Ohio. And then I hated when we moved to Florida because I wanted to go back to Texas. Then once you stop and realize where you're at, and even if you're in the middle of nowhere, even if you're in a desert, even if you're in somewhere you don't want to be, I don't like the beach that much. I'd rather be in the mountains, and I'm at the beach.
I'm not a beach person. It's definitely mountains. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
mountains.
Even if you're somewhere, that's opposite of where you would like to be, there's still so many opportunities that can come from it. And you just really have to stop and, realize that. And, especially as a military spouse or a military child, you're most likely only going to be there for a few years and then you're going to be up and moving again.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important to have that positive outlook on so many different things within the lifestyle, moving and, deployments and everything that comes with the lifestyle.
Well, luckily, my late husband didn't do many deployments. Being in Air Force, he was not a pilot. So, I didn't have that to worry about.
Yeah. And that is so, when you don't have to worry about, deployments coming up, it's so you can take the relief, instead of when's the deployment going to come up, when it's especially, times of war. It's like, you never know, and it could happen any second. And, it's fun when you don't have to worry about that.
I remember my dad, I wish I had asked more questions of my parents, and unfortunately I didn't think to ask more probing questions. I know my father was involved in a plane crash. It was a amphibian plane, and they had to land, and he had a problem. He suffered from that for a while.
Yeah.
That crash. And he had just left 2 days before, Honolulu before it was bombed.
Wow.
So he left Honolulu on the 5th of December, and they bombed it on the 7th of December. And my mother had no idea where he was. Couldn't contact him. No, she didn't know for almost a year.
Wow. I couldn't imagine that.
Awful, huh?
Yeah. Because you just think about that and it's like, you never know. And because technology wasn't as advanced and you can't just pick up the phone and call or send a text message. And so you're just left worrying and wondering. And a year is a long time.
It is. When we were in Hawaii, there was a typhoon, or I never can remember what type of storms come through Hawaii.
Typhoons are in the Pacific and hurricanes are in the Atlantic.
Cyclone, or I don't know. I don't know what it was. Anyway, it was a big storm that came through. And after it was over, we all jumped in the car and Dad took us to the base so that we could make a call to the relatives in Mississippi to let them know we were okay. We didn't have long distance phones.
Wow.
You had to do it on I don't know what you call it. Anyway, it's a military line that you sign up for, and you go and they hook you up with whoever you need to hook up with. I don't remember what it is now, but I remember we had to do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I also remember that there was a gentleman, another military man that lived about 3 doors down from us that committed suicide.
My goodness.
So I remember that too. There's so many things that, I remember about different places. It's, I'm just sorry my folks aren't here, I wish they were here.
Yeah. And, it's so incredible to think back and, those memories that you have that are tied to a specific location and being able to remember what happened and what went on and the different, the good memories, the bad memories, and everything in between of living on a base or being a military child or spouse. And, it's really incredible to think of literally everything that can go on.
It's funny. I don't have many bad memories.
Really?
No, I can't think of. Well, there was one incident in Hawaii where I was a bad girl, but I really don't remember any. I don't have many bad memories.
I mean, you had a good outlook on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I loved it. I really did. I loved being a military brat, mother, wife. Sorry, I'm still not.
It's hard, I'm sure, to leave that. Like it was hard for me to leave it as a child at just 12.
My
not experienced
all the way up to let's see. Hi, when did we divorce? Golly, I can't remember. But I guess I don't remember. But it's when I divorced him that I no longer had military privileges.
Yeah,
and that was a big shock.
I'm sure. I'm like dreading, the day that it comes and I don't have it anymore, because it's what I've known my whole life.
Exactly. Oh, I was born right into it.
Yeah. And once I've heard it feels like, just something getting ripped away from you, like a piece of your life. You feel
lost.
Yeah.
You feel lost. But the saving grace for me is that I live here in San Antonio that has bases all over.
Military USA.
Yep. For the last week, every night around 8:00, there's 3 or 4 planes that go over the house.
Wow.
I'm questioning why. What are those planes? It's new. I had not. So is it a buildup for what's, going on in the world? It's always interesting to, think about that.
Right. And because you have the experience of being part of a military family for so much of your life, kind of the signs and, what could be going on. And those questions start coming immediately.
I do remember being in the Azores and there was a domestic plane crash.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of the military went to help with that crash. I don't remember much detail about it, but I just remember that part.
Yeah. Because, the military has some of the best equipment and, we're trained to, take care of those kind of situations. And so, they just send the military out to deal with it.
Yeah. Too bad they don't do that in the southern border. Sorry.
No, I totally get that. Believe me. One reason we don't want to live in Texas right now.
Well, it hasn't really hit us here in San Antonio.
Yeah.
I understand it's worse in New York and Chicago.
Right.
And that's where my granddaughter is. I wish she'd come home, but.
Yeah. There's so many things. Like, I think we look at, politics and the outlook of this country, and we have such a different perspective than civilians and those who have no military life experience. Even just being a brat or a spouse, you have a deeper appreciation and you look at it and you're like, oh no, like, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah.
I think, growing up, I, instilled in me was the sense of patriotism. And I think everyone needs that in their lives. And, exposed to military life or not, like, everyone needs that sense of pride of being an American and, growing up in this country.
My sister doesn't have the brat mentality. I think when my dad retired, let's see, he retired in 68, and she was only 11. So she didn't have the full blown military brat life like I had. Yeah.
And that makes a difference, because if you don't have that experience in those lifestyle, it's hard to think about it.
Right.
And if you really think about it, then, obviously you can pull some of those experiences together. But at such a young age, even 11 being young, it's hard to put those pieces together and understand, the brat mentality.
Yeah, because she went to grade school, middle school, and high school all in one place. Yeah. Southern California.
And that's rare.
That didn't happen.
No, you move all the time and make new friends. And I think military kids are very well-rounded. Oh, sure. You have to be. Of all the things that you run into or are forced into. Yeah. It makes change is no big deal. Right. Change to some people is heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. But for me, change is just, that's the way it is. It's that way every day. Something changes, Yeah. You just roll with it. The new normal. Right. And you just roll with it. You don't get all up. No, change was so hard for me for so long. And then when it keeps getting forced at you, you're like, okay, well, I just have to go with it now, because I obviously don't have another choice. That's the norm. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the last thing I want to ask you is if you could give a piece of advice to a military kid or another military spouse, what would you tell them? I would have to say support your military member, whether it's your husband or your dad or your mom, or, just support them as much as you can, because it's harder on them than it is on you, and to embrace change. And it's wonderful. I mean, every place I've been has been a different living experience, because they're all different. Either it's a different culture, and even moving across from the East Coast to the West Coast is culture change. Yeah. So I would say embrace change and support your military family member. That would be it. No, I love that. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing. Very welcome. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, follow, and comment. Also, be sure to check out Instagram and Facebook at Grace of a Military Child and Life for more awesome content. For information on the podcast, Military Child Bigs and Littles, GoAMCL blog, or other resources, visit www.goamcl.org. You can also email me at Gracie, that's GRACIE @GOAMCL.org, with any questions or comments. To be a guest on the podcast, you can schedule it at www.goamcl.org/schedule a podcast, all one word, or contact me via social media or email. Stay tuned for the next episode where another incredible story is shared.